Hi, both. Thanks for joining us today on our Business Gurus channel, where we will be discussing key business topics to help students grasp the most important elements of their course in preparation for their exams and future career. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you send us and we tear right into them, basically, pulling out the insights you need. Today, we're strapping in, getting into some real organizational physics. We're looking at how the vertical setup of a company, how that shapes everything, stress levels, how fast things move. Yeah, our mission today really is to quickly unpack this fundamental trade-off you see in almost every organization. It's this tension, right, between orderliness and speed. We're looking at systems with, lots of layers compared to ones that are deliberately kept thin and fast. So if you've ever felt completely bogged down by bureaucracy, or maybe the opposite, like you have way too much on your plate, this deep dive should help explain the structure behind that feeling.
Right. And to really get into this, we kind of need the same vocabulary. It helps. There's this whole world of organizational design, and I think there are about 6 key terms we should probably pin down first. Not just definitions, but how they work. So first up is organizational structure. That's just the overall blueprint. Simple enough.
The blueprint, okay.
Then hierarchy. That's the ranking. Who's above who?
Makes sense.
And the chain of command, that's the formal path for reporting, like who you actually answer to officially. Those are sort of the basics.
Got it. Structure, rank, reporting path.
Exactly. But the two that really drive this whole layers discussion are span of control and then what comes out of that, whether a structure is tall or flat. Span of control, it's just how many people a manager looks after directly. Simple concept, but huge impact.
Okay, why is that so crucial? The number of people.
Well, think about it. If a manager's span is narrow, like they only manage, say, 3 people, then you obviously need way more managers to cover everyone, right?
More managers needed.
And that automatically creates a tall structure, lots of layers. But if the span is wide, maybe a manager handles 15 or 20 people. You need far fewer managers overall.
Right. Fewer managers, fewer layers.
And that gives you a flat organization. So span of control directly shapes whether it's tall or flat. That's kind of the core physics we need to understand here.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting with those systems built for order. The ones with all the layers, the tall ones. So when we say tall structure, we mean built on that narrow span of control idea, forcing all those quote-unquote many layers in their hierarchy. Our sources point straight to places like, well, the police, the military, high-stakes institutions. They're not layered just for kicks, right? There has to be a reason. What does having that tight span of control, only a few people per manager, what does that give an organization that these places really need?
Well, the big thing they gain is clarity and control. Stability, too. Because that span of control is so tight, manager to just a few reports, it creates this massive inherent structure where everyone knows exactly where they fit in the hierarchy. No confusion.
Okay, so everyone knows their place.
Yeah, you get really tight management, high accountability moving up the chain, and the result is a system that's just very orderly, very organized, which, when lives are on the line or processes absolutely have to be consistent.
Predictable.
Predictable, exactly. That clarity of who does what, who reports to who, that's a massive, massive benefit. It's built in.
And looking at it from the employee's side, that strict structure, the narrow span, it sort of forces management roles to pop up all the way through, doesn't it?
It does.
Which must mean there are lots of opportunities for promotion. That's got to be a big motivator, psychologically, financially, too.
Absolutely. It's a huge factor. You always know what the next step up the ladder looks like.
A clear career path.
A crystal clear path, yeah. And that gives people a sense of stability, progression, something to aim for. And, that promotion path isn't just about fancier titles. It's also about how the work gets spread out. Because the hierarchy is so deep, the work is actively shared amongst more people. You don't just have managers. You have assistant managers, coordinators, team leads, directors.
Like lots of different roles sharing the load.
Right. Exactly. They all share the strategic thinking, the day-to-day operational stuff. And that distribution of tasks, well, it means the burden on any one person is actually much lower. So the result tends to be less stress overall for people in the system. The structure itself kind of absorbs the pressure rather than piling it all onto a few managers trying to juggle huge teams.
Okay, that benefit, less individual stress, clear career path. It sounds really good for keeping people happy, keeping them around. But hang on, doesn't that also make it easier for people to hide? If the workload is so spread out, couldn't average, maybe even mediocre performance, kind of get lost in all those layers? Does accountability get a bit fuzzy?
That's a really sharp point. And yeah, it's one of those subtle costs you don't always hear about when people just describe tall structures.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
When work is sliced up and spread across so many different roles and levels, individual accountability can get diffused. It becomes easier maybe to point fingers up or down the chain.
The classic, that's not my department excuse. Precisely. You hear that a lot more in these very layered places. So yes, diffused accountability is definitely a potential downside. But the really big, the sort of crippling drawbacks, they come directly from those layers, messing with communication and responsiveness. First off, just getting information moving is slow because you've got so many links in that chain of command. Information takes a long time to get from the bottom to the top.
Like a game of telephone through management levels.
Kind of, yeah. Each layer acts like a little speed bump, filtering things, maybe accidentally changing the message a bit as it goes up. Critical stuff gets delayed.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible if you need to react quickly to something in the market.
It is terrible for that. And the direct consequence is pretty obvious. It takes a long time for decisions to be made. If the key data, the stuff needed to make a call, takes days or even weeks just to climb the ladder for review, well, the decision itself just cannot be fast.
Approval hell.
Approval hell, exactly. The sheer number of people who need to sign off, maybe just okay a small change, it creates this massive bottleneck. The whole system is built for being predictable, for lasting, not for being nimble.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then. You've got this trade-off. On one hand, perfect order, everyone knows their place, maybe less day-to-day stress on individuals. But you weigh that against the fact that if your organization needs to pivot, needs to change direction fast,
Yeah.
it might take, what, months just to get the decision made?
Sometimes, yeah.
So for you, listening,
Okay.
understanding this means seeing that the structure itself, the tallness, it puts a fundamental limit on how fast things can happen. Speed just isn't the priority. So if tall organizations, the ones with that narrow span of control, are slow but stable, what happens if we yank that lever the other way? What if we deliberately make the span of control really wide?
Right. So if you widen that span of control dramatically, let's say, 15, 20, maybe even more direct reports per manager, you're fundamentally cutting out layers. And what you end up with is a flat organizational structure. This is the model you see everywhere in like modern tech startups, creative agencies.
Yeah, places that need to move fast.
Exactly. Any organization where being super responsive, agile in the market is like the absolute top priority. And the benefits of going flat are pretty clear. They're basically the mirror image of the tall structure's problems. You get immense speed. Information flows almost instantly because there just aren't many layers for it to get stuck in.
A short path from the front line to the top.
A very short direct line,
Yeah.
from the person doing the work to the person making the big calls. And this tends to lead to employee empowerment, too. People often have to make more decisions right there on the spot because they can't just kick it up through 5 levels of management.
Okay, that sounds like efficiency heaven.
No.
Speed empowerment. But if the tall structure traded speed for low stress, the flat structure must be trading agility for something else, mustn't it? What's the cost? What are the built-in problems with having a really wide span of control and hardly any layers?
Yeah, there's definitely a trade-off. And this really brings up important questions about, well, individual well-being, career paths. The big cost of flat organizations is often high individual stress and accountability because the work isn't shared among as many managers or layers.
Right, fewer people to share the load.
Exactly. The pressure on each employee, and especially on those managers with huge spans, is much, much greater. If you're managing 15 direct reports, your job is incredibly intense. And if you're one of those 15 reports, you're very visible. There's less room to distribute the workload or lean on intermediate managers. It's more direct pressure.
Sounds like burnout could be a real risk.
Huge risk. Burnout and high turnover are really common in poorly managed flat structures. You need really good systems or really resilient people, or both. And then there's the human side, the career thing we talked about with tall structures.
Yeah.
That desire for progression, it often gets kind of stifled in flat organizations.
How so?
Well, if you only have, say, 2 or 3 layers in the whole company, there are naturally fewer opportunities for promotion. Where do you get promoted to?
The ladder's missing rungs.
Eh,
Or maybe there's no ladder at all.
Pretty much. You skip the ladder. Your career might involve a big jump in responsibility, maybe moving sideways into a different area, but that clear step-by-step path you get in a tall structure, it just doesn't exist.
So you might get a pay rise, but keep the same title for years.
Exactly. You might get a 20% raise, which is great, but still be called senior developer or whatever for 5 years because there's nowhere obvious to go up.
Okay, so if we connect this all to the bigger picture, the
Huh?
choice, tall versus flat, it's not really about which one's better overall, is it? It's about what fits.
It's entirely about context.
Yeah. Our sources really highlight that. Places choosing those deep layered systems, military, police, maybe large manufacturing, they prioritize clear authority, stability, making sure the workload is manageable.
Control and reliability are paramount.
Right. Control, reliability above all else. Whereas the places choosing flat structures, startups, tech, creative fields, they're prioritizing speed, getting feedback quickly, individual empowerment.
Innovation and agility are their main drivers.
That's totally different priorities. You wouldn't want a super flat structure running, I don't know, a nuclear power plant.
Definitely not.
And you probably wouldn't want a super tall, rigid structure trying to launch the next viral app. It'd miss the boat completely.
Exactly right. So for you listening, the key takeaway here is really recognizing that the company's core strategy, what it's trying to achieve, it's actually baked right into its structure. It's visible there. You now understand, hopefully, that when you see an organization with that deep layered structure, narrow span of control, you should expect to find decent promotion paths, maybe less intense individual job stress day to day.
Right.
But you absolutely have to accept that the speed of decisions, the organization's ability to change course quickly, it's going to be inherently slower. It's part of the package. And when you see a flat structure, wide span of control, expect speed, expect empowerment, maybe more excitement day to day.
But again, the flip side.
The flip side is likely higher individual pressure, maybe more risk of burnout, and probably a much less defined, less predictable career ladder.
And the simple mechanism driving all this, the lever that sets the trade-off, is that span of control. Narrow span means tall, stable, slow. Wide span means flat, agile, potentially stressful.
Precisely. Which, thinking ahead, raises a really interesting question, doesn't it, for the future? If technology, things like AI especially, if they get really good at handling admin, communication tasks, maybe even middle management oversight, speeding up information flow regardless of how many human layers there are.
If AI can handle the data flow instantly.
Right. Does the inherent value of that traditional hierarchy, those middle layers, does it start to just disappear? If a system can manage data across 20 teams instantly, do we even need human middle managers anymore? Could technology actually push almost all organizations towards a much flatter model just to maximize the human parts, the speed, the agility, the decision-making at the edges?
Wow, that's a provocative thought. How AI might fundamentally reshape corporate structures in the next decade or so.
Okay.
So today, we dove deep, we laid out that key vocabulary hierarchy, chain of command, span of control, and we really unpacked the built-in pros and cons of tall versus flat organizations.
Yeah, and maybe a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. Think about the organizations you interact with. The shop you went to this morning, the local council office, your own workplace maybe. Think about how fast or how slow they seem to respond or make decisions. Could that speed, or maybe that lack of speed, could it be directly traced back to their structure? How wide or narrow is that span of control? How many layers are sitting between the person you talk to and the person who actually makes the final call? That structure, tall or flat, it's kind of the invisible engine determining how responsive they can be.
Definitely something to observe. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into organizational structures. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks to both of you for joining us today. You've been listening to the Business Gurus. Let's now hand it over to you. What further questions do you have based on what we've discussed so far? Leave a comment and we'll get back to you right away. If you haven't already, hit that follow for more business tips.